過羅卡泰利嘅 G 小調第12大協奏曲作品編號1嘅第12首，為我哋演出嘅係奇利石指揮伊斯杜多利新樂團。
We've been listening to Locatelli's Concerto Grosso No. 12 in G minor, Opus 1, played by the Capella Istropolitana, conducted by Jaroslav Krajcek. The time right now is coming up to 17 minutes past 9, and joining me in the studio is film critic Howard Elias. Good morning.
Good morning. Special time again, but next week we're back to our regular time.
Yes, which is, remind everyone.
It's too early in the morning. Thursday mornings at 8:30-ish.
Ish. Okay, now the first film we're going to talk about is this American neo-noir science fiction. Sequel, okay. Blade Runner 2049.
Blade Runner 2049.
So, first, take us back to the original Ridley Scott Blade Runner of 1982.
1982. Have you seen it?
I did in 1982. I don't remember it.
Yeah, look, that's a fair comment because I was the same thing.
It's 35
years ago. And, we had done a lot of drugs between then and now. Well, some of us. But yeah, I didn't remember.
We're not speaking for each other, we're speaking for the other people.
Yeah, the other people, of course, for sure.
No.
Yeah, I also saw it in 1982, and I didn't really remember what it was about. I had this vague memory, but maybe that's because over the years I saw clips, but I really didn't remember the story. So I watched it again. 2 weeks ago I watched it.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh, okay.
And, this was a film, when it came out in 82, it wasn't a box office success. Critics were very divided on it. Audiences were divided on it. Some people praised it for its stunning visuals. Other people thought it was very slow. And the plot was razor thin, considering it was a 2-hour film. And the plot, I must admit, the plot really was razor thin. But since that time, director Ridley Scott has tweaked it a number of times. I think 7 times or 6 times, something like that. He's added scenes, he's deleted scenes. And 35 years later, it is now considered a cult classic.
What wasn't there were the director's cuts version?
Well, that's it. Yeah, there were all these director's cuts. Yeah, what happened was I don't remember the whole thing, but the studio wanted a happy ending, and Ridley Scott didn't. So the original one had a happy ending, and later cuts didn't. There's other issues about whether Harrison Ford's character is an android, which is the term that they use in the film, is a replicant. So there's a question of whether he is or he isn't, and that debate still continues today. So Ridley Scott says yes, he is I have to remember. Ridley Scott says yes, he is a replicant. Harrison Ford says no, he isn't. So even the actor and the director disagree. And
so let's talk about the plot. The plot is something to do with these replicants and a war between the species.
No.
No? Okay.
You need to watch the original.
I really don't remember.
No, I mean, look, there's been environmental damage to the planet, and a company called Tyrell has created these androids called replicants that are basically slave labor for the human population. A lot of the human population has left Earth. They've gone on to other planets. They've colonized other planets, and they use these replicants to do all the work. And what happens in the version that was available at that time, I think they were version 6, if I remember correctly, of the replicants, they had a lifespan of 4 years. And what happened was some of these replicants had decided they didn't want to die after 4 years. So they needed, so the Earthlings or Tyrell Corporation or whoever needed to have these police called Blade Runners. I don't know why they were called Blade Runners, in fact, but anyhow, they were called Blade Runners to go and, quote unquote, retire these replicants, basically kill them if they weren't going to die after 4 years. So
this is what I mean, like creating this conflict between them and us.
Well, but the replicants back then, they didn't really want to. They just wanted to be left alone. They didn't want to take over the world. Oh, there were some. There was Rutger Hauer's character who was quite self-actualized, but generally they wanted to be left alone. They wanted to live, and they couldn't. So Harrison Ford's character, Rick Deckard, had to go and kill them all. So in the original film, there were 4 of them that we met in the story, and some of them were quite roguish. and wanted to live beyond their 4 years, and other ones were laying low. So in this film, he does kill a few of them, and he also falls in love with one of them, played by, I forget what was her name, I can't remember her name, but she was played by actress Sean Young, who today, we don't see too much of Sean Young because she's sort of been booted out of Hollywood. She was quite a troublesome actress, sleeping with many actors and causing trouble
Harvey
on the
Weinstein?
set. Who knows? It was Harvey Weinstein. But I remember she was in a movie with Kevin Costner. I think it was called No Way Out, where Kevin Costner was a sailor.
Allegedly.
Yeah, and she slept with Kevin Costner. I think she broke up his marriage, and
So she was a true troublemaker.
yeah,
Okay,
she was a
let's
real
move
troublemaker.
on.
Yeah, so
Okay,
so
she was kind of like blacklisted.
yeah, she was blacklisted. So we don't see too much of her anymore. So that's the actress.
Now we know why. Okay.
Yeah, now we know why. So I'm trying to remember what happens at the end of the film. Well, I'm not going to tell you. Go back and watch it again. So now, Blade Runner 2049 takes place 30 years after the events of the first film. So the first film was 35 years ago, but the events are actually 30 years later.
So was it worth the wait?
Well, it's very interesting. Hollywood loves sequels, but usually the sequels come a couple years later after the original, not 35 years later. So it's interesting that it took so long. And there's been many people commenting that perhaps it took too long. That let me just say, I love this movie. Okay, I'll say that. But I can understand that some of the things that happens in Blade Runner 2049, we've already seen in other films. And maybe if this film was made 20 years ago, it would be groundbreaking. But today, in 2017, not so groundbreaking. So I think there's a valid argument there that some people have made. So now in the story, and I don't want to tell you, I'm not going to have any spoilers in this film because if people do want to see it, I don't want to ruin it for them. But I'll just say that Ryan Gosling from La La Land fame, he plays LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department Officer K, as in the letter K. And he, like Deckard before him, is a Blade Runner. And unlike Deckard, whose provenance has been up for debate for the past 35 years, he is most definitely a replicant. Okay, that's not a spoiler. We learned that in the first 30 seconds of the film. Okay, so I'm not revealing too much here. So he is a replicant. His mission, like Deckard, is to retire rogue replicants from earlier generation replicants. I think now they're up to version 8. But there are still version 6s running around. So he has to go kill them. And in one of his missions, he goes and kills one, but along the way, he uncovers a long-buried secret that can turn the world order upside down. And now under orders from his superior officer, he is told to destroy all the evidence regarding this case because it is so mind-boggling and changing worldview and the way the way the world sees things happening. So he embarks on a journey that ultimately leads him to Deckard. So Harrison Ford, if you didn't know, is in this film again. And Deckard has been missing for the past 30 years. Nobody knew where he went. So he does find Deckard, and we do find out why Deckard has been hiding for the past 30 years. And I'm not going to say anything like more about that. And meanwhile, the original company that built these replicants, Tyrell Corporation, is no longer around. It's been replaced by a new company called Wallace Corporation, run by Neander Wallace, who's portrayed by Jared Leto of Dallas Buyers Club fame. And he also knows that the information that Kay has found is dangerous to his own company. It can change his company as well. So he dispatches his able assistant named Love, L-U-V, played by Dutch actress Sylvia Hooks, to follow Kay so that she can find Deckard and kill him before Kay protects him, let's say. So it's a cat and mouse game, a chase, to find Deckard and either protect him or kill him, whichever comes first.
Now, what about the visuals?
The visuals, I think the visuals are wonderful. Part of the success today, the cult success of the Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, is the visuals. It looks, there's these elements that looks a little bit like Japan and Hong Kong. People say it looks like Mongkok on a rainy day, or Causeway Bay on a rainy day. And apparently, Ridley Scott had said Hong Kong did influence the visuals in the original film. In this new film, it's that and more. You see that in 30 years, the environmental damage to Earth has become even worse. So the haze, the smog is even worse. There's this orange haze over Los Angeles all the time that you can barely see through. San Diego is basically a huge garbage dump in the film, not in reality. So I don't want to offend people who are from San Diego. And they go to some of the off-world locations, and they're looking pretty grim as well. Some of them are looking pretty grim. So you do see that they've taken the spirit and the visuals and the mood of the film and taken it to a whole new level in this film, which I really appreciated.
So overall, thumbs up.
Well, I absolutely loved it. I got to say, it's like the first one. It is very slow, so it's not for the impatient. But I have to say, after about an hour into the film, I was watching this going, I have no idea where this story is going, which I think is wonderful. If you can't figure out where it's going,
exactly, yes.
But I want to find out. I was so intrigued that I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm sitting here and I'm going to find out where this story is going. To me, it was a very well-written story, slow, but well-written. The characters are excellent. I thought Ryan Gosling was excellent. People online are saying, oh, you had this blank look on his face. He was a replicant. He's supposed to have a blank look on his face, right? I think the two women in the film, as I said, Sylvia Hoeks, who plays Love, I'd never seen her before. She was excellent. The other big star of the film is Ana de Armas, who plays Kay's holographic companion by the name of Joy, Joi. And she is the big winner. She's going to get an Academy Award nomination for sure. She was fabulous in this film. Very interesting. There's a lot of talk, again, online about the names Joy and Love and how they relate to Kay. I'm not going to get into it because that would be a spoiler. But there's so much... There's a lot of hidden meaning in things. So, this is a film that people are going to be analyzing for another 35 years, which I think is great. So this is one of my favorite films so far this year. And I think you can expect to see it getting a lot of Oscar nominations when the time comes. So I give it 2 thumbs up. I know it got good reviews generally when it came out last week, but now box office is trailing off. Some people are saying they don't like it as much as the first, or they're nitpicking. So I understand people are turning off on it. I don't care. I liked it.
Okay.
Go see it.
Let's talk about some films in Kino 17, the German film festival, which the films that are selected represent the recent trend in German cinema that tackle topics, and we're talking about things like homeland and identity, love and friendship, sorrow and loss, and you want to tell us about 2 films. The first is a drama historical film, Fog in August.
Okay, yeah. This is actually based on a true story, which, one of the things I love about the films that, maybe it's German cinema in general, but definitely the films that Kino shows, is that they give voices to segments of the population that we really know very little about, or most of us know very little about. And the 2 films I'm going to talk about certainly illustrate that. And Fog in August, Fog in August is based on a true story about the Nazis' program of eugenics against its own citizens, which took place between 1939 and 1945. Actually, I think they were doing eugenics even before 1939. But this involves the work that the Nazis did at hospitals, where they took the people who were mentally and physically infirm and gassed them to death. They put them in a van and gassed them to death. And that's how they got rid of their undesirable, quote-unquote undesirables. So this story is a little bit different, and also it's true. The story, the crux of the germ of the story is true. It's about the Roma and the Yenish people. Are you familiar with Yenish?
No.
Okay.
Roma, yes. Yenish, no.
Okay, yeah, Roma is.
Explain.
So we used to use the word gypsy to as a sort of a name to call all these people, but today gypsy, the word has fallen out of favor because it's deemed derogatory. But these are basically travelers, people who really didn't have a rooted home, a traditional home that we know of, and they went from town to town peddling. And Yenish are a group of people, I don't know, there's a few 100,000 of them still around today, and they live in Central Europe, around Switzerland, Germany, France, northern Italy, that area, and they travel around. And it's very interesting that as I was doing research for this, the Yenish, it's not a language that they speak. It's sort of like the equivalent of Cockney is to English. It's slang. So they speak Yenish slang. There's a lot of Yiddish words in Yenish. And it's interesting because you think back at that time, pre-war time, that the Jews were also marginalized from society, and a lot of them were peddlers, and they were going from village to village. And so the Yenish and the Jews, were interacting with each other, and they, their words, their languages meshed. So very interesting. So in this film, 13-year-old Ernst is a Yenish boy. He arrives at a psychiatric hospital in the German town of Hadamar in 1939. His mother is dead and his father is in prison. And by the way, the father's in prison simply for being Yenish. And the authorities have delivered this rebellious tyke there to keep him out of trouble. But Ernst, who is both street smart and sensitive, he quickly earns the respect of both his fellow patients and some of the medical staff, especially Sister Sophia, who enlists the boy's help each day to help feed a little girl who is mentally ill, and she won't take food from anybody else. She'll only take it from Ernst. So each evening, what happens is the hospital's doctor, and this is all true, the hospital's doctor, Dr. Weithausen, played by Sebastian Koch, he prepares a list of patients who are slated for euthanization the next morning. And the next morning, the hospital staff gather up these people, load them onto this van. The van drives off into the countryside, and these people are gassed to death. You don't see this. This is all off screen, but we know that it happens. And the people in the town start thinking, well, this is rather distasteful. They don't want to be a part of this, so they complain. So now the director has to find a new way to kill his patients. And for some, it involves a starvation diet, and for others, it involves a newly hired nurse, sort of an angel of death, actually. She feeds them a cocktail of barbiturates mixed with raspberry juice, and that's how they're killing their patients. Now, little Ernst starts figuring out what happens, and that puts him on a collision course with the doctor. And what he decides to do, he decides he's going to run away before it's too late. And he knows how to break out. He just needs the right opportunity to do it. And so the clock is ticking. Can he get away before his name ends up on the list? And at the end, you do find out what happens to Ernst. I don't think there was a real Ernst, but there was a character that Ernst is based on, and the true story of him. So I thought I enjoyed this film a lot because it's a subject we really don't see in film. I thought the little boy, his name is Ivo Pietzker. I'd never seen him before. I thought he was wonderful. This is like a really heady subject, and he handles it really, really well. So I enjoyed this film. Enjoy isn't the right word for this film. I appreciated the film. Yeah, I appreciated the film. I enjoyed his performance. I appreciated his performance. The only thing I think that it's a very difficult film to market because it's got this youth-oriented aspect to it, but it's about death. Ultimately, it's about death. So do you really want to take your kids to see a film about death? It's like, some parents might be a little bit queasy about that. But I think, if you can handle it, if your kids can handle it, I say go see it. Good film.
And then we have House Without Roof.
House Without Roof, also interesting story about a subject that we really don't see in film. It's a story about Kurdish people. I don't know that I've ever seen a film about Kurdish people and filmed in Kurdistan. So I thought that that alone makes the film worth watching. The story is about three adult siblings, Jan, Alan and Leah, who were born in the Kurdish province of Iraq, but they came to Germany as refugees in the 1980s with their mother after their father was killed under the Saddam Hussein regime. And now the film moves forward to 2003 with the fall of Saddam. The mother decides to return to Iraq with the eldest son, Jan, whereas the other two kids stay behind in Germany. They've essentially become German. They've lost their Kurdish identity. Fast forward a few years, and the mother has now died. but she leaves a note for her children that she wants to be buried in her hometown, which is, it's funny in the film, they say it's 600 kilometers away, but I looked on Google Maps, it's only 350 kilometers away. So I don't know why they said that. And the director is Kurdish. I mean, she would know the distances. So I don't know why she said it was 600 kilometers away. So Jan,
why did you think you needed to look that up?
Because that's me.
Oh, okay.
That's me. Because
people wouldn't question it. It doesn't matter.
Well, you know why? Because when they said 600 kilometers, I thought, is Kurdistan really that big? I think that's what twigged it in my head. I thought, it's not that big.
Okay.
And sure enough, it's not. So the eldest son, he reluctantly wants to respect his mother's wish, but he has to deal with his siblings who have come back for the funeral, and they've all grown distant from each other. And, so he's got to deal with that. He has to deal with his headstrong uncle who wants his sister buried alongside their family in this northern Kurdistan town where they're living right now. And then there's the paramilitary who are trying to maintain calm because, this is this lawless regime. And to make matters worse, ISIS is coming in. So this is like 2004, 2005. No, I guess it's even later than that. ISIS is coming in. So they have to, it's a crazy time in that part of the world. So you have all these forces coming together at the same time. And what I learned about this film is that the director, her name is Soline Yusuf. As I said, she's a Kurdish refugee who's currently living in Germany. And she felt that, there's so much press coverage about the refugees, but we really don't know any of their stories. We don't see them as individuals. We see them as a block. And so she wanted to create a story about individuals. And I think in that respect, she succeeded, because what we learn from the story is that these people love, they argue, they celebrate births, they mourn deaths. They're not perfect. They're just like us. And Germany has this whole, lately, a couple of weeks ago they had the election where the far right party achieved tremendous gains in parliament, and the far right party is the anti-immigration party. And I think what she wanted to say is, these people are just like us. We are just like you. And that point comes in loud and clear in the film's closing shot. So I think that she was successful in her attempt. Now, interestingly, the film was made a couple of years ago. Was shot, as I said, in Kurdistan a couple of years ago, and they had to delay production for a couple months because ISIS was attacking the Yazidi people in Kurdistan. They were killing off the Yazidi people, and there was this mass migration of 2 million people to Sinjar, which is the capital of where the Yazidi people are based, and to nearby Mosul. Mosul was the city that just was taken back by the Iraqi forces just a few weeks ago. And Mosul is only 60 kilometers away from where they were filming, so they had to stop production. So it was a very real situation, dealing with ISIS in the film. So I thought, good film. Again, not an easy film to watch. But as I said, we never see films about Kurdistan or Kurdish people, and I think for that reason alone, it's worth your time.
Okay, and the films are being shown?
They're in a few places. The festival opens tomorrow night. I can't remember the time. It opens with My Blind Date with Life, which I reviewed here last week. That'll be at the Hong Kong Arts Centre in Wan Chai. And then there's also screenings at the Film Archive, the Grand Cinema, Cinemoco, which is in Mongkok, and in Macau at the Cinematheque Passion. So it starts tomorrow night. I think it runs, do you know when it runs? To the 23rd or something like that? I can't remember.
Let's see, to the 25th.
To the 25th, yeah.
Yes, and this, so the best thing to do is either go to the Goethe Institute's website,
yeah,
or just Google Kino, Kino 17,
right,
and you could find out all the information. And so those are 2 films that are going to be in Kino 17 this year.
Yeah.
Okay, Howard Elias, thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you. See ya.